Each of you is very welcome. Maria Alejandro and Noelani Cubello Santos at the University of Texas, San Antonio, and I, Sister Martha Ann Kirk at the University of the Incarnate Word, have the privilege of hosting these panels again and again. They are growing and they are valuable because of the contributions of each one of you. We are about collaboration, compassion, cooperation. We want to be an example for the world of working together to make a better world. Recently, the University of the Incarnate Word went into an alliance of 4 schools. I hope you can see my shared screen that this is called charism, and we have people from Sagrada Corazon in Puerto Rico. Would you wave your hands right now? Our partners from Puerto Rico, Sagrada Corazon. And we have a partner from Mount St. Vincent in New York City, Katie Alexander. She's not in the room yet, but each one of you is a special guest, and we are grateful. We are so pleased that UTEP, University of Texas at El Paso, has a fine center, and Heriberto Garcia from there will moderate today. So take us forward.
Thank you, Sister Martha. My name is Heriberto Garcia. Good morning. It's morning in El Paso still, and afternoon, I'm pretty sure, in other parts of the country. So I would like to welcome you all to this conversation. We will have a really cool collection of stories, experiences, and thoughts. And at any point,
Um,
if you
for Forgive me, I should have said this sooner. Please put in the chat box your name, where you're coming from, and if you'd like to put a phrase about yourself. Thanks so much. Okay, Heriberto, back to you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. As I was saying, if you at any point feel like you would like to jump in, feel free to put a question in the chat, and we can go ahead and see how we can incorporate that into the conversation. Or if you would like to even jump into the conversation, feel free to raise your hand, and then we can like loop you in. With that, I'll share a little bit about myself. I am from El Paso, Texas. I wasn't born in El Paso, Texas. I was born in East LA, and moved over to the region when I was a teenager and have made El Paso my home since then. I am a first generation student. I got my bachelor's in communications and journalism at UTEP, my master's in education at UTEP, and I am a doctoral candidate as well at the university. I have been doing community engaged work for about 13, 14 years now. I continued this work. It's a passion of mine, and incorporating into higher education is also something that ignites me. And with that, I've been able to see and do a lot of things in higher education that incorporate community engagement. And with that, I would like to present our first speaker, Dr. Alfredo Ortiz. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, no problem. Hey everyone. As my grandma said when my mom told her, my grandma Aragón, she passed away a number of years ago. Mom, Alfredo, he got his Ph.D. Well, can he cure my arthritis? And so we immediately got ground truthing immediately from my grandma as soon as I got my PhD. So I can't help you with any of your ailments, but please call me Alfredo, and if you need to call me doctor, that's fine, but I can't help you. Um, I'm going to introduce myself properly here in a second with a couple of slides, but really nice to see all of you. And I'm excited about being able to share a little bit of my experience, particularly because I come from the world of action research and community-based research. And I worked many years before that in the field of international development, before I ever gave a thought to entering academia. And so I had a couple careers before I came into academia about 10, 15 years ago, I guess. And I've always struggled with figuring out whether the things that I do with students are service learning. And one of my mantras has always been that my goal as an academic is to take the to take the classroom into the community and bring the community into the classroom. Literally, I try to get out of the class as much as I can. And I just really want to leverage the power of the university for community good and also open the resources of the university for community benefit. And so that's kind of my agenda, but I use action research to do so. And for many years, I did kind of consulting-based action research projects with master's degree students at a university in California. And they were very much focused on helping people in need, working with communities. But when I would see the definitions of service learning, I was like, we're not, that's not service learning. We're not really doing service learning. And then since then, I've gone more into the world of action research and community-based research. And even though I think it's a first cousin maybe of service learning, sometimes I have a hard time fitting it within the definitions of service learning. So what I'm going to do is share a quick explanation of how I understand action research or community-based research, and then give you I'd like to share two examples, but I don't think I'll have time, so I'll share probably just one example, and then ask you, is this service learning? And I really want to learn more about how I can integrate these things. So let me share my screen. Can you guys see a slide? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks, Maria. Okay, so the two projects were called Sembrando Amor, Sembrando y Cosechando Amor. That was a holistic breastfeeding engagement that I'll have to either probably share that one or the other one. And the second one was called Rewriting the Script, which is a process with students engaging with parents of children with autism in trying to figure out ways to help them advocate for more rights. And so the basic question I'm asking is community-based participatory action research a form of service learning? And I won't go into too much more detail on this, but just wanted to share a little bit about who I am. I'm from northern New Mexico. Heriberta, I know you're not from El Paso, but you kind of are now. I went to college, my first degree in Las Cruces, so not too far from there. And when I drive home from San Antonio to Pojoaque, I always get this feeling, this lower right-hand corner picture, that the landscape changes. You can't see in the back, but there's a peak back there that's 13,000 feet above sea level. And just the air cools down, and I see the vegetation has changed. And little by little, I'm like, oh, I'm becoming that kid from northern New Mexico. I'm becoming my parents' kid again. The local accents coming out again. Going back to the stories that we like to repeat ourselves to each other, that don't include as much of my more recent life, the last few years. People, as we've all learned, they love to hear about your adventures and new things, but not too much. They mostly want to hear the old stories of how they knew you way back when, and then we figure out how to be that and still be someone new, and all the transformations some of us go through when we go back to a place that we're from. That certainly happens to me. And things that just remind me of home I grew up growing chili against my will. My dad, he wanted to grow chili. We'd have like a half-acre garden, produce about 18 sacks of green chili each year, which is an exaggerated cultural practice that I can now see how exaggerated it is, but it's the core of my food. Upper left-hand corner, you'll see the green chili that we roast and freeze. And any good New Mexican's freezer is full of 20 to 30 packages of frozen green chili. So if you meet one, ask them, if you get enough confidence, say, can I see your freezer? And then you'll know for sure that that's where they're from. And then the red chili, of course, is the same chili as the green chili that's on the bottom. Those are ristras. It's a process to dry the chili. In northern New Mexico, we grind it and use it year round. In southern New Mexico, they keep it in pods and blend it, and they're both amazing chilies. If you're wondering, is this hatch chili? Similar, but ours is a skinnier, richer, more flavorful form from northern New Mexico. But I like hatch chili too. And on the upper right-hand corner is my dad showing about as much enthusiasm as he ever shows. My brother making up for it because he has double the enthusiasm. And then a friend who came to with me one time to see what is this harvest thing that you guys do. So that's a little bit about me. I share all this, and it's not an icebreaker. It's really part of a process that we engage in when we're working with community, to continually share who we are, who are you, so that we can go from me to we. And that's a central aspect of a community-based work. We don't dissolve the power relationships that exist sometimes between the people we're working with, but we try to be able to engage each other's knowledge on a more equal level as much as possible. And a lot of that happens through story sharing and that kind of stuff. And that's what I mean by radical epistemologist. All that means is we're way more interesting than our narrow professional personas. And if we can allow those other people to come out, you might find a cultural bridge to someone else's story and knowledge. And I'll just finish this slide with a little question. Am I a service learner? I'm not sure. Was meant to be a cliffhanger? I'm hoping, there's a lot of tension in the air right now. Okay, so the questions I'm going to cover I've already covered them. Is community-based, is action research service learning? And is service learning action research? And is it a worthwhile question or not? Can we learn from each other? Should we? I'm going to quickly explain a little bit about action research, just to give you a little bit of context as to how I'm going to differentiate what I do, but for purpose of seeing if they're similar. And action research goes by many names. PAR, participatory action research, Theory U, Memoria Lab, systemic action research, action science, citizen science, appreciative inquiry is a form of action research. So there are many ways it's a huge family of practices. So I don't want you to think too narrowly about it, but I don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but I'll give a couple examples. The main thing that makes something action research, this is my shorthand explanation, is that you will see people coming together. We can, just like in service learning, people coming together, but really focus around the key central knowledge holders, which are the people who are supposedly being helped. So participation by those who know, taking action for purpose of learning, and then learning from that action for purpose of informing future action. So it's a cycle of acting and learning with people, as ideally as co-participants, co-researchers, and not as beneficiaries. I'm going to briefly unpack those three ideas. So participation of those who know is probably the most important aspect of action research, which asks the question, well, whose knowledge counts? Who are we here to help? And how can we help people in a way that is on their terms, that they set the agenda? And then little by little, how do we go from me, them, to we? How do we break the binary of us and them, which can often lead to paternalistic helping processes? And I like the picture, it's a little blurry behind there. This was during an action research process I was part of for a couple of years in southern Peru. And I love, this was an evaluation at the end of the project where we were asking, did we actually live up to what we said we were trying to do? Were we actually participatory? And if you want more about that, I can share some things we wrote about that. But what I like about the picture is it's the people, the communities we were working with directly coming together to decide that, analyzing it, and deciding with us, did we do right by each other? This is another example of participation of those who know. This is a really cool article, by the way, but that I didn't write, just that I read, that inspired a lot of the work that I'm going to share. But what I like about this picture is this is a picture of indigenous LGBTQ plus youth who were part of a project to improve sexual behavior, sexual health, and in a high risk group. And the cool thing is the people doing the helping, which was a combination of students and professors, they didn't come in and say, we're going to help you. They said, hey, you know something about your own experience. Why don't we engage in a digital storytelling process where you tell us what does healthy sexual behavior look like? Let's work together. Let's create knowledge together. And then let's use that knowledge to both educate and advocate for ourselves, but also to inform others and change the nature of the type of messaging that might be more relevant. So I've always loved this picture, and I like this little example. It's a key example of saying those who know, those who are closest to the issues that are trying to be, they are the best placed to become the co-researchers to lead the process or co-lead the process. And then these are just pictures of how we try to engage different organizations who do work directly with communities on how they can work with communities in ways that allow them to go from me to we and to center community knowledge and to kind of get out of the helping game and instead become part of the movement game. These are just a few more pictures of action research in action. The picture up on the upper right-hand side is of a community engaged process meant to kind of advocate to improve the quality of the of the education, the schooling system for their kids that was really beaten up and not well taken care of. And they used a photo voice process with communities to kind of a little bit of name and shame, create an exhibit in front of City Hall saying, are we okay with this level of infrastructure for our kids? So directly with the parents, come together, generate knowledge, use it for change. So the service is working with people to generate their own knowledge to use it for change. On the bottom right-hand side, it's a bunch of people. I forget the country. I think this is from someone who I have worked with a lot, Danny Burns. It was a country in Africa, and I forget the exact country. But I like this picture because it shows people after they've shared their stories doing their own analysis with help, but they're doing their own analysis. So I like that. Action research tries to keep that focus throughout, that people know and people can do. They're thinkers, not just doers. They're not just recipients of help. Up here on the upper right-hand corner is a action research process that works with communities in the Basque Country and in Colombia to deal with intergenerational trauma from the civil wars that have taken place. And here in the center is a picture of a community-based process trying to reimagine a blighted dock area in a city in Sweden. So those are some examples. I'm not going to cover this in any detail because I want to get onto the example, but the first idea of the three, participation of those who know, in doing two things, taking action for learning and then learning for purpose of informing action. And the ways we take action in action research are everyday life, community engagement, formal research, interviews, that kind of stuff, prototyping, action experiments, advocacy and protest as actions meant to generate learning, solidarity. Are those service learning activities? Maybe not. I'm curious to hear from you guys. What separates action research, though, is we're not just taking action. We're not just doing. We always ask the question, what knowledge emerges when we do these things? And that's where you do need a little bit of a few research skills. And then we do some traditional research sometimes, creating walls of knowledge and organizing. What are we learning here? And having conversations across the table. What have we learned? But the key thing that differentiates us from typical researchers is every time we process knowledge that we've generated through action, we always ask the question, what action follows? We don't generate knowledge for knowledge's sake. The knowledge is meant to be used tomorrow to be more informed in the way we're trying to move forward a action research process or a service learning process. And of course, that's me and you in the middle, being reflective about whether or not we are really centering participation of those who know. So in summary, action research is participation of those who know, that's there in the middle, in acting to learn and learning to act for purposes of generating some sort of improvement that people define for themselves. So that's at a definition level. I'll just share one example. I know I don't have a lot of time. I'll just share one example on how this plays out, and then I'll throw the question back to the group. Is this service learning? And can I just do a quick time check on how much I've done so far? I want to make sure I don't, let me go how quickly in this example.
I think we've done more than like 17, 18 minutes.
I've already done 17 minutes?
About,
Oh, wow. Okay, then I'll just I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to have you guys read a cartoon. that is of one of the two examples, and I won't present it at all. And so I'm going to have you just go read through two cartoons, and then I'm going to stop. So this first one, if you just read it from here down, one row, two row, three row, and then one row, two row, three row. That's the whole cartoon. Just spend a minute reading it if you get a chance.
Alfredo, are you able to send us the book that your students made? That would be even better than our trying to read really, really little letters on a screen.
Oh, apologies. I thought people could read it. Yeah, I can also send it. I'll
Great.
just summarize what this was. This was a process, students partnering with parents and kids with autism, asking them to share their stories of adverse experiences in the healthcare system, then coming together with the parents, creating art from their stories, going out with the parents and using the art in clinics and other places to inform and advocate, and then coming back together and uh, asking, what did we learn? And then having a final advocacy event in the children's hospital in the autism wing where doctors, nurses, and others could see what parents and future healthcare providers were learning about how to treat uh, parents of kids with autism a little bit better and listen to them a little bit more in the healthcare setting. That was this project. And so I'll stop there. We had another project on breastfeeding, which is Sembrando Amor. But if in the Q&A, I can share a little bit about that if it comes up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, and then I'll let him share more about himself and his work. Let me So JP Peters' his work has focused on volunteer programs and working with students in experiential learning ways, but I'll let him get more into that, so I'll turn it over to him.
Hi everybody, my name is JP Peters. I'm at Georgia Gwinnett College. It's in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta, and I also serve as the chair of SLIC Georgia, and that's something that started the last year and a half, and we've really modeled after SLIC San Antonio and been working together and comparing and contrasting around our communities and how it's kind of morphed in that way. So that's been really neat. But more so on the context of volunteerism, I'm a person that's always worked on the more programmatic side of things, and engaging our students to just get into the community generally and volunteering. And I think a challenge that I've been presented when I started here at Georgia Gwinnett, it's been about 2.5 years, and it's also an institution that's 20 years old. So we're very infantile in what we're doing as an institution and trying to move more into that service learning space, but really wanted to start small, as this space is something that hasn't been really developed. So we wanted to make sure we're looking at and working with our students, but also our faculty. So working to do focus groups with our students, but also our faculty members to kind of figure out where both of those groups are and figure out what we can start, as a low-hanging fruit scenario just to get us started in that space. So A need of our community is around basic needs. It's also something else I support here on our campus around food and clothing and shelter. But something that was more challenging is not necessarily food, as we've done a really good job with that, but providing our students with clothing because we have a lot of need around that. And just general decency as a person, whether or not you actually need clothing, but would like more clothing options as a person that may not be able to afford those things. So we saw a problem on our campus through various basic need or focus groups, and then we worked with an entrepreneurial class to develop, what would something like that look like. So they, as a group, decided, let's go the thrift model. Let's go that direction. Okay, how do we source those clothes? How do we do these different things? Is it free? Is it something they have to pay for? What does that look like? So we allowed the students to make some of those decisions, and then we launched it the next semester. So this allowed our students to look at our internal community to develop something different through a programmatic way. So ultimately, we were able to source clothes through our faculty, staff, students in our community, and started with a initial model during Earth Week, as it's a sustainable based initiative. And this is something that went really well. We put out all the clothing, said, hey, you can get up to 6 different things. So they decided, okay, well, let's do that. So they had an opportunity to go and shop. Well, students are coming by. I'm over here crying because they're telling their stories of how they how they haven't had shoe options. They haven't had a different pair of pants. They haven't had an opportunity to be able to dress more professionally because they haven't had access to these clothes. Mind you, we're in an area of the metro area that a lot of people just like to shop but don't actually wear clothes. So they were bringing brand new clothes that still had tags on them. So it was an opportunity around dignity where they got basically brand new clothes that they could take with them and dress. So after that initial experience and we're getting those verbal responses and also trying to encourage them to actually write down their experiences as well, we saw, okay, well, we see here the need is now met. We see the students are engaging, and we now have made this an annual thing that we do a pop-up every 2 weeks where students have access to clothes and can help them with the dignity that they feel they want and need as a person, and they want their peers to have as well. So ultimately, that was kind of a low-hanging fruit scenario where we worked with a class to develop a model, and we presented the model, and now we do the model, and we got the data from it, and we see it's valuable for our community here on campus. So that was one way of trying to put into practice, what our students need and helping their community, which is on campus. So we've built around that, and now we're working on, with the faculty, other ways we can engage our local community now in different spaces, both through direct service, but also through qualitative based experiences and how we can collect that data as well. So those are some things we're trying to figure out as a community and trying to not only figure out, but also how we can coordinate it to be more effective and be a lot more streamlined in that process. So that's just something high level I wanted to share with you all, and excited for our students just to have that dignity brought back to them in a very constructive way.
Great, thank you so much. I have found both to be very interesting and showing how we do service learning in different methods, right? I was listening, um, and mostly to the question of what is service learning, right? That's always been a question that we've always have tried to answer, and even looking at Furkel's balanced approach to service learning, what is the intention there? What is a reciprocal process of the service and the learning? And tying out how like this method of supporting people in the community with clothing, it does provide a, a duality to the service and the learning, right? You're using a classroom to provide and develop this methodology and this approach, and then having people do the work, right? And then you have this action-based research where you're having an idea, you're looking at the research, incorporating the community in it, and seeing the learning aspect in there. And what I found to be the most important part, right, of any community engagement or any service learning is the reflection process. that's the most important part of any service learning. There has to be reflection, and if there's no reflection, can it be called service learning? That's always been the debate, right? And so with that, um, does anybody in the chat have questions? Anything they want to add before? I do have some more thoughts and questions.
Kind of wish I had some more visuals now that Alfredo went. I was like, oh, I wish I had brought pictures now.
Yeah. Seems like we don't, but one thing that I stood out for me from Alfredo's conversation is um, coming back to where we are from, right? And I think a lot of the times as we get older and we become professionals, we start layering these identities that we have, and we sometimes forget about that individual who raised us, like that individual person, because at our core, we are that person. And I think having the access to do community engaged work reminds us of who we are, reminds us of our humility, reminds us of what skills do we have, what talents do we bring with us. And with that, I wanted to ask everyone is, how do you see yourself in community engagement, right? How do you all do this work? And maybe you want to put this in the chat, but maybe JP or Alfredo, might you want to share something?
I
And
mean,
then we'll turn it over
I
to.
don't mind. I don't mind sharing. So for me, just historically, I was raised by a single parent. Really didn't see and understand the value of community at points in my life until really was challenged at later in my early 20s, and was put into a scenario of like, okay, what do you do now? And
Mhm.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, what can I do to stall? What can I do to stall? And I actually found the AmeriCorps program, and actually joined it for all the wrong reasons, to be very honest with you. And once I got into it, it brought me to reality of, wow, I didn't realize what this community and these needs were, and how I can make such an impact, through service, but also giving space at the same time with those communities, and not taking up space, but assisting in those spaces. So for me, I did that 2 years at two different locations, and it really set the course for me where I am now. And that's for me what the impact looks like, of how I can not only programmatically impact things, but how we can take the data and information we're gathering to create impact through that as well, from the things we're learning as we go. So that's kind of my background and my experiences with community-based learning.
It's great.
I can answer real quick, and I think Martinella has a question after. My biggest thing has been lately, the last few years has been um, working with people who kind of have community activism in their work, and that's their stubborn insistence on constantly asking the people that we're trying to help, is this what you want? Is this what we want? And using the reflective process to little by little see ourselves as being part of the situation and not separate from it, and kind of blur the lines between helper and helped, not recognize the distance and the level of difficulty people are going through, but to generate more solidarity and allyship in the way we work. And so the reflective process has become a little more of like a critical, are we sure we're not falling into trying to heroically be the helpers again?
Mm, mhm. Um, Martinella, you had a question or you had your hand up? You're on mute.
You think I'd learned this by now. So I do have a question. I'm at a small private liberal arts college, and I'm in the process of putting together a proposal for a certificate in community engaged learning on my campus. So I'm kind of trying to find some different resources and examples that I can use. Maria was very nice enough to invite me to this panel when we were talking a couple of weeks ago. So I guess my question is as you're doing the work in the community, I know that one of the main things during this experience is gathering data and having students, kind of share this data out. How do you decide what kind of data to gather? And then what are your outlets for sharing that with the community? Is it always some kind of maybe poster showcase or Is it always publication? How is it that you gather the data, and then how do you share it out?
I can share how we've done it in these two processes. In neither one of the two processes that I mentioned briefly, the rewriting the script process of parents and kids with autism or the breastfeeding project, in neither case did we declare in advance, even though they were both health focused, we didn't say this is the research project. Instead, we were fortunate in those processes, and it's not always possible to be able to say what do we want to do together. So we were able to continually do that. And we, at the end of the breastfeeding process, we did a participatory, what we call sistematización de experiencias, so systematization of experiences, where we systematically reconstructed what did we do, what did we learn, and we produced an academic article together with the community members as lead authors. And it was long, painful, conflict, but we stubbornly kept saying, who gives us the right to be the ones to invite participation? Like who gives us license to say you're invited? So what we did instead is we as a group continually said, are we listening to each other? Are we still serving what we're trying to do here? And the last thing I'll say is going back to the earlier action research idea, the knowledge production is for use. So we always ask ourselves too, how do you turn the experience into usable knowledge that people can put in their own piece of art, their own story, their own whatever, and carry it with them and use it more confidently. So converting the knowledge into usable forms is really important because we want people to see that their story isn't just useful as an informant. They can actually use their own story to leverage change with other people as an evidence base. But for that to happen, they need to have forms of their stories that they can use easily. And that's not always a traditional academic article.
I can share some context. At UTEP, we are a public open access R1 community engaged research institution. It's a lot. But with that, we've been able to really build the institutional capacity for community engagement. And one of those areas is our designations of community engaged learning. So to answer the question is we have an internal designation to designate courses that are community engaged. And that could be various ways. That could be a service learning course, a course that incorporates research, a course that has community engaged rotations, site visits, student teaching, clinicals. And so we have developed an infrastructure to designate these courses. And so that has allowed us to build capacity to make it across the campus. And so as a center, we are working towards, because this program was through the College of Liberal Arts. And so what happened there originally was a group of faculty worked together to develop the framework for this designation. And then from that designation, having a process to look at the courses that could be community engaged, looking at the classes and having a criteria for them, what is considered community engaged, but also having the flexibility to allow for various ways of engagement. And so that has allowed us to build that capacity and then start working towards institutionalizing it collectively across different disciplines and around the colleges. We also have a high impact practice framework. And so through that, we have various ways to provide reflection opportunities for students. So for example, we have an undergraduate research center where they have a poster session every end of the semester. So they have a community engaged research project. They have the ability to present this through their poster sessions. We also have showcases around campus to show what students are doing in the classes. And then we also have awards, celebrations, and different ways to kind of visually showcase this. And so as you're thinking about it, I think also looking at the institutional capacity of what it comes with this certificate program, because the academic side is important, but also the visibility aspect of it as well is also just as important.
Heriberto, and I would just add to what you said. As you were explaining all that, I was getting a vision in my mind of how you guys are really enabling knowledge to travel, and you're not seeing knowledge as something to be presented, but as just a pretext to the next conversation. And I saw all these things you're doing, the events, as a way of helping that knowledge travel in ways that people can continue to use. So I think that's really, really cool.
Um, Something else that we're doing at Georgia Gwinnett, we're actually piloting this this semester, is that we are presenting our students an opportunity to take artifacts and poster presentations and all these things that they've done over the year or two to then turn around and use as a pitch competition, an opportunity for them to pitch their ideas and pitch the experiences to future employers so they can then talk to them about their experiences, because we've seen, at least with our students, that they're having a hard time getting jobs because they can't articulate and they can't share their experiences with employers. So ultimately, we want them to create impact in the community, but we want them to share those experiences as concisely as possible. And they've been struggling with that. So we're trying to give them space to practice and learn and how to actually take that information and turn it around to help them get a job.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Something I forgot to mention is through these different areas that we're working with, the community partners are also at the table with these conversations. It is important that the community partners are just as involved in the process. We at the institution, we see them as co-educators, co-facilitators, co-creators. And so we ground our work and our practices in inclusion of them. For example, we work with, for example, I know this is a health and wellness conversation. I'll give you an example of something that we've done at UTEP. We have this event called the Hope Health Fairs. And what this does is that every quarter in the year, the departments within the social sciences on campus, whether that's clinical laboratory, nursing, different units academically and not just academically, they come together and they collaborate with community organizations to bring mobile clinics to at-risk populations in the city. And so they work collaboratively to provide all of these medical needs to at-risk populations, whether they're at colonias, home-free populations, even on campus. We've had them on campus for our students. And so we see almost 100 community partners working collaboratively with academic units and other departments on campus to provide these healthcare resources. And students in social work are the ones doing intakes. We see clinical laboratory students drawing blood. We see students doing clinicals. We see them doing vital checks and then doing referrals to other resources, right? And so that shows an example of how one service learning project can be, it was a small little project that became this big event in the community. It is national, it's celebrated, it's funded, it is recognized at the institution, and it provides capacity for learning, for development and impact.
Great. That's all great info. Thank you so much for sharing.
Do any others in the chat have or in the room have questions or thoughts that they have?
I have a question for JP. Oh, no, go ahead. Esteban first, please.
Hi, Esteban Lopez from UT San Antonio here. I've been working with the Historic West Side Resident Association, and most of what we have been struggling with is to find resources to keep the things that we have been building together going. That's, the first question. I would like to pick your brains about you all. What are the other resources that you can have, basically get connected to these communities to maintain the efforts after, the university takes over, and what's, the role of the university? Should the university always be present? Or at some point we should help them, build capacity towards, their own self-determination of, goals. And then the second thing, more specific is, we have also been having trouble finding ways to give them data governance. We collect data and then university hosts the data, but the accessibility of communities to that data sometimes is hard, and they're not super trained or well trained on data management. So at some point, would like to hear your thoughts on that as well. Thank you.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is for this this health fair that I was talking about, those are hosted at nonprofit and community organizations. One of them was hosted at our largest food pantry. It's called the El Paso's Fighting Hunger. They see hundreds, close to thousands of families on a daily basis. And so they took this mobile health fair to them. It doesn't charge, they don't charge to be hosted. The collaborators, the partners, the city organizations that come in are not paying, they're not being charged. So they're providing their services at free. And so when it comes to the resources, there's not a lot of financial resources that's being invested into the project itself. It's mostly to pay for like tables and chairs and some of that infrastructure that is needed. But ultimately, a lot of it came very grassroots. It was developed very grassroots with some funding, and then it's been kept alive since then. Um, what I've seen from that project is that some of the community organizations are part of the publishing process as well. And so they're being provided the opportunity to publish. And so it gives them access to the data and also how to learn the management aspect as well. Recently, what we did is we have a thought partnership with UNM, Texas Tech, where other institutions in the Southwest region. And we hosted our first ever convening, and we invited community partners to this convening for them to see the day-to-day dynamics of the institution, of how things are operated. That way, they see, because sometimes our community organizations or community partners say, well, why do they move so slowly in higher ed? And so it's hard to explain that. And so incorporating them in these conversations, they get to see firsthand why some of these things are the way they are. And so we provide that outlet for them to be in that learning with us as well. I'm not sure if JP or Alfredo have anything to add to that question.
Oh, okay. So I think for me personally, through experiences, I think an institution is there to serve community, and ultimately you're there to assist with resources. So I think in the long term, I think you're creating a crutch if you let them rely on you for too long of a period of time. So you're just there to help them build that capacity, build whatever it is that problem is that they're struggling with, because they don't have either the resources or knowledge to get where they want to go or get what they need done. So I think in the short term, it's fine. Long term, you need to wean them off, get the training wheels off, and let them go and do their thing, and then maybe find another scenario that they need assistance with, versus continuing on with the same thing. That's just my thoughts on that piece.
Yeah, I completely agree with JP. We just started a little project on the west side, on kind of tracing people's food journeys. And this is the Healthy Neighborhoods program in the city of San Antonio has been working with a group of people on this food bucks program. But they did the first round of research in a very traditional way. And what they want to do this time around is say, well, let's figure out how can we help. Let's not figure out what are people's food journeys. Let's figure out how can we help strengthen people's food journeys by getting them involved differently. And so the way we're doing it, it's a very small project, but we're partnering with Esperanza Peace and Justice Center, and doing as much training as we are anything else. And the whole thing is designed to not be owned by the city. And I'm just I'm a facilitator. I'm not really formally there as UIW. But I think we need to build on local organizations, networks, and really actively challenge the way we design our grants, to design in mechanisms for continual community co-design, and not come in with so many cooked things that then forces down a pathway of operating on non-community time, and just ultimately kind of facilitating our way into something that we think is good, but rarely ask people what they really want and need.
Great, thank you. I know we have a couple of minutes left. Does anybody have any closing questions, any thoughts that they would like to share with the group? Sister Martha?
I just put something in the chat box. We welcome any of you to join our service learning collaborative, or you could be like JP in Georgia and start your own service learning collaborative, and typically we meet every other month. And what we had hoped is to have these panels on the opposite months. We're not always on time, but we're doing all this good stuff. So if you want to join SLIC, so I asked SLIC last semester, do you have web pages for service learning? And I put the link in the chat box of the web pages that we have been working a whole lot on. And then, in light of what Alfredo was talking about, I want to show the picture on our service learning webpage. And I will tell you that I had to fight to get this picture up. They had a pretty picture of pretty students working in a wealthy neighborhood. And I said, no. So this is what we are expressing. That Guatemalan mother in an area where 69% of the children are malnourished is the primary actor. She wants the children she carried in her womb, the children she breastfed, and the children that she's making meals for now. She wants for them to be healthy. In their area, they have had tortillas and black beans, tortillas and black beans, tortillas and black beans. So this nonprofit, founded by some of my former students, has pointed out that if children don't get enough nourishment before they are 4 years old, their brains don't develop properly. So that's one of our students from San Antonio, and we go there and we work in partnership with the mothers and the people that want their children to be healthy, who want their children to be literate. So anyway, and I invite any of you or all of you to let me know if you've got web pages on service learning, and I want to see what you're putting up, and we're trying to put up better stuff. And Alfredo, you mentioned a grant a few minutes ago. Katie, Nadesha, and Laura, go look at your email. I want to suggest we work on a grant together.
Well, thank you for sharing, Sister Martha. Any other thoughts? Any other comments from the group?
I guess in that vein, I know with SLIC Georgia, we are actually currently collecting not only a unified service learning focus and definitions as a collective around the different work we're doing, but also comparing and contrasting what our institutions are defining that as. And ultimately using that information and national information to just ultimately figure out how we want to come together and work together on these scenarios best we can. So those are some of the things we're doing in that space.
And I would say this is the opportunity to really think about how you ground the grants in community infrastructure, even if that takes a long time. And so this is the chance to not cook it up so much in advance, but really create a process with community leaders in the grant writing process and not go to them after. In a time of authoritarian movements, it's really time to go back to community. And so this is an opportunity to try and do it the right way.
Thank you. Well, we have 1 minute left, and with that, I wanted to share that while service learning is a present part of a lot of our lives, just know that we are doing our best to collectively make impact, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, there's best practices, but I think being invested in the work and having the intention to make positive change is the most important thing, and then everything else comes together. Um, and I want to thank Alfredo and JP for joining us in this conversation. And also stay tuned for other upcoming conversations and panels, and stay connected. I'm sure that there will be more information being sent out. And with that, thank you all for joining us and have a great afternoon and lovely rest of your day and week.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.